but I must admit that I'd hoped you would take me for my own sake. A hunted man sometimes wearies of distrust and longs for friendship. Strider, before he became the hero of the Hornburg, or king of the free men of Middle-earth, was a ranger of the north, and had to make friends with the most unlikely of companions. But friendship and fellowship he found in men, in hobbits, in elf, in dwarf, and of course, do not forget about the wizard.
You have my sword. And you have my bow.
And my axe.
Isildur's heir strikes the heroic pose in this Tales of Middle-earth card. A wonderfully aggressive card that makes combat a dreaded phase of your turn for your opponents. Providing first strike and renowned 1 to all attacking creatures, Aragorn Hornburg Hero goes on the offensive early. Once creatures have hit a player once, they become renowned and gain a +1/+1 counter, thus triggering Aragorn's second ability next combat. Once renowned, they will start to double their counters every hit of a player. Or, one could say, have double strike and become renowned and double the counters in one combat. Sitting in Naya colours, red, green and white, we have an ample supply of cards that are going to have a wonderful time amongst the 99. I will start with a quick acknowledgement of the land base of this deck. My tried and true way of building any deck that has green in it. If you want a cheaper land base, you will have to run mostly green lands with an ample amount of ramp with plenty of basics. This would be my suggestion for a cheap land base and a cheap deck. Fill your deck with about 38 lands, mostly basics, and run about 10 to 15 ramp spells. If you are happy to spend a little more on your land base, you can venture out into the lands that tap for 2 or 3 colours and sometimes enter in tapped. I would still suggest running some basics and a bit of ramp, because who doesn't love being ahead in lands? The more money you put into your lands, the smoother your deck is going to run, especially in 3 colours. Now moving forward to the good stuff in the deck, the creatures. As an avid Lord of the Rings fan, I think when building decks like this, a little bit of flavour goes a long way. So I would start with adding some creatures from the Fellowship. Try, say, Legolas and Gimli, and maybe some hobbits and a certain wizard. Now, Tales of Middle-earth added some great support to a combat-heavy and a +1/+1 counter strategy. However, there are already so many great cards in the Magic universe. Let's start with these budget options, but let's be real, even if you wanted to splurge with this deck, these cards are going in. Quende upgrading your first strike to double strike is a huge buff. Valoran Wardens giving a draw every time a creature goes renowned. Conclave Mentor and Lae'zel doing pretty similar things by just increasing the amount of +1/+1 counters you get. Now, if you're happy to bump the price of the deck up a bit, you could be looking at some of these wonders. All with the same idea of increasing the +1/+1 counters on each of your creatures. Clonian Hydra is a great one with doubling all +1/+1 counters whenever it attacks on each of your creatures. Arwen just getting more counters as they enter. Court of Garenberg and Virtue of Loyalty just great enchantments for this same idea. Now, not cards I would normally look to be putting in a deck due to their price, but if you have been playing Magic for a long time, there is a good chance you may have pocketed these at some point in your Planeswalking history.
What has become its nasty little pockets?
The Odylus is great and has a really nice Lord of the Rings print. Doubling Season is, well, doubling season. And of course, Vorinclex. And look, even Gaia's Cradle's pretty good in this deck. I'm just kidding, who has the money for that? Right?
But its worth was greater than the value of the Shire.
Or, if your playgroup is cool with it, just throw in a proxy. Now that we have run through a few of the good looking cards in the deck, let me quickly run you through the deck list. You can also find the link in the comments if you want to have a look while we're going through. Whilst you are there, please like and subscribe and leave a comment on what you think of this commander, and if there are any other commanders you wanted to take a look at creating a deck for. Alright, so I've got the deck up in Moxfield now. For this deck I decided about 30 creatures is a pretty good place to start. Small number of sorceries and instants. Got a few artifacts as well. Enchantments might be a bit heavy in this deck at the moment, but that's where I'm leaving it at the moment because I think all of them are pretty great. And as I said earlier, 38 lands. Got a mix of the cheaper lands and the more expensive lands. So if you're looking for more of a budget, you can definitely cut out some of the more expensive ones we've got here. Let me just quickly run through the tags I've got here. I'll come back to +1/+1 counters. Pretty heavy Anthem style here. So got creatures like Abzan Battle Priest, which is all your creatures +1/+1 counters have lifelink. Abzan Falcon does the same thing but with flying. We've got Haste Enablers. all those sort of things. Most of my EDH decks I want to be running a board wipe or two. Damning Verdict is pretty perfect for this deck because hopefully you should be having +1/+1 counters on most, if not all of your creatures. So having a one-sided board wipe I think is always really good. You could add in some more if you wanted to. Having good board saves, Heroic Intervention's an easy add, isn't expensive cards. Inspiring Call is a much cheaper alternative if you want something like that. Single target removal I think is pretty good. Your Beast Within, your Generous Gifts, your Past Exiles, Sword to Plowshares, all of those pretty easy to add in these decks, all pretty cheap. If you wanted to have a little bit more interaction, you could be looking at a few more. Looking at the draw here, we could need a little bit more. Most of these will repeat, so I think if you have one or two of them a game, then you're looking at a pretty good number of cards in your hand, assuming they stick on the board. So you could do a little bit more if you want to have a little bit more reliability with how much draw you get. My Mana Docs and Ramp are also maybe a little bit low. If you did go for a cheaper land base, you definitely would need some more Ramp in here, but these are sort of the instant ones that I normally put in. So up to you, but you could add some more if you wanted. These token megas also work pretty well off +1/+1 counters, so I don't think it's a huge deck that you're going to go really wide with tokens, but these ones definitely have some added advantage by doing a couple of different things, and Anduril Flame of the West is just a very thematic card, so why not add that in? So lastly, I just want to look at the +1/+1 counter cards. There are a lot in here, so you could cut back on a few of them, especially the enchantments or the artifacts. If you definitely wanted to be more creature heavy, that's where I'd be starting with cutting back. I just want to point out a couple here for you. Branching Evolutions, newer card, doubling the amount of +1/+1 counters is very strong. Champion of Lambholt doesn't help you add +1/+1 counters, but I think it's a very strong card most of the time. But adding into this deck where it's going to get bigger by attacking, I think can really help you get all of your damage through. It's also really going to help you get your first renowned or start doubling your counters on your smaller creatures. Looking through here, you've got a bunch of the ones that add an additional +1/+1 counters like your Hardened Scales, Conclave Mentor, Arwen Weaver of Hope, Good Fortune Unicorn. Any of these ones that add extra +1/+1 counters when they enter or when they attack is really going to help this deck ramp up quickly and be scary very fast. That was just a quick run through of the deck list there. Thanks for watching, and let us know in the comments what cards you think we missed for Aragorn Hornburg Hero. I hope you enjoyed the video, and as always, don't forget to pay rent.